Hey everyone, I hope this finds you well. In the past, I've mentioned that I like dabbling in a bunch of different things to keep myself from getting bored. So this video is going to be about a bicycle ride and not kayak fishing. So if you're swinging by for kayak fishing content, you can probably skip this video. Okay, so with this video, I'm going to cover things like what, when, and how. And then I'll go on to cover things like equipment, game planning, etc. So one day I woke up and wondered, what is the toughest bike climb ride in California? So I did an internet search. Now I should note that you will never have 100% agreement on anything on the internet. But most people would agree that the Onion Valley Road Ride is the toughest bike climb in California and maybe top 5 in the country. Okay, so let's take a look at some of the particulars. So this system here is some kind of like a ranking system where the mathematicians figure in like elevation factor, surface, work, distance, grade, and they give it a score. So Onion Valley scores a 38.8. In terms of distance, the total one-way distance is about 13 miles. You pick up about 5,200 feet of elevation in those 13 miles. And the average gradient is 7.7. But do not let this fool you, okay? So let's take a look at some of the other stats. So again, PDI rating is 38.8. Elevation, you start around 4,000 feet off the 395. And then when you get to the top, you're roughly about 9,000 feet of elevation. And so you pick up about 5,200 feet, gradient 7.7, okay, distance 13, but 7.7 does not tell the story, because if you ride around in Southern California, for example, you're gonna see grades between 5 and 7% typically, okay? What this does not tell you is that there are pitches on this route that go to 10, 12, 15%, right? So you might be thinking, okay, so what's the big difference between, say 8% and 12% grade, okay? Well, I'm here to tell you that it is huge. Nominally, between 8 and 12%, it seems like 50%. But in terms of perceived effort, the difference between 8% and 12%, it literally feels twice as hard. In terms of timing, as in what part of the year you want to make this attempt, this can be tricky because the discrepancy between low and high in terms of elevation is so great. So you're starting at 4,000 feet and you're ending up at 9,000 feet. And so you could see wild temperature swings, as much as 30 degrees. So if you, for example, have a crack at this ride in, let's say, November, when the forecasted daytime temps in the valley off the 395 is maybe, let's say, 70 degrees, by the time you get to the top, you could be looking at temperatures in the 30s. You could be looking at rain, a very cold rain. You could easily see hail, things of that nature. So between cold and hot, you're probably much better off choosing hot, okay? So let's say you decide to have a crack in July when the forecasted daytime temps in the valleys are in the 90s, okay? So if you start this ride early at the crack of dawn, in the valley, the temperature is maybe gonna be like 70s. And by the time you get to the top, you could be looking at temperatures in the high 60s, which is pretty ideal. And so when I did this ride in early September, that was the case. So if I had to choose the two best months, I would probably say either May or early September. Okay, on to equipment. I don't think this ride, because it's a one-day attempt and probably will take you, it could take you anywhere from like 3 hours to 6 hours to complete this task. It's not super equipment dependent. Myself, I chose a cyclocross bike. The Pride color scheme is optional, but I chose this cyclocross bike not because of its weight. It's not a super lightweight bike. It probably weighs in at about 20 pounds, but let me show you why I chose this bike. Look at the cogs on this bike. Look how big these cogs are. These cogs are almost mountain bike sized cogs. And besides pure fitness, I think gearing is the biggest factor in whether or not you can get to the top of this hill. You absolutely need gearing that will help you negotiate these crazy grades of, again, 10, 12, 15%. Okay, a couple more important housekeeping notes. I stayed at a campground called Gray's Meadows Campground. I do believe there's a lower and an upper. I chose the upper, and I think it sits at maybe like 5,500 feet, maybe 6,000 feet of elevation. So maybe it affords you a little bit of getting acclimated. I had to do this attempt solo, which means that you have to cache food because you want to be as light as possible. So what I did was at around the, like 8.5 mile marker, I cached food and water. And then again at maybe like the 10 mile marker. So basically my game plan was to start from Independence at around 7 a.m. or whenever first daylight is, and then ride to Gray's Meadows, pick up some food or eat some food and drink, okay? Go to my first cache point and eat and drink again, and then one more cache point, eat and drink again, and then finally end up at my destination. Now, in terms of weight, I'm not a person that obsesses on having the lightest bike or being a certain weight when I do a bike ride. But for this particular ride, it can matter a lot. Okay, so if you think about it, like a gallon of milk will weigh something like 8-9 pounds. And so no one wants to drag a gallon of milk up this hill. So you want to come in as light as possible. I probably came in, if I had to guess, maybe 10 pounds too heavy. So if you have that kind of wherewithal to be able to drop weight, you probably should. Okay, at this point, I'm going to shut my pie hole and just give you some footage from the attempt. Okay, and so it begins. We're in the town of Independence. Right off the 395. The street name is Market. Okay, at this point, I'm about 3 miles in. You can tell the sun keeps creeping lower on the horizon. And when that sun hits you, you don't want to be anywhere near the valley because, again, forecasted to be about 100 degrees in Independence. And this bears repeating. Do not blow your wad on the first half of the ride. First half needs to feel like cake. All right, so we're now at like a steady 7%, and it's about to get steeper. So conserve, conserve, conserve. If you're really struggling the first half of the ride, to be honest, it's probably not going to happen. Okay, at about the 4 mile mark, the grade will ramp up 10, 11%. And if you look closely, maybe around like 1 o'clock, maybe 2 o'clock, you'll see a stand of trees. And so that is Gray's Meadow Campground. And that's my base camp. So one of the most important tips I can give you is if you are doing this solo, and so, well, first of all, if you have help, you're pretty good because you can have your teammate, run up or drive up, and then every 2 miles be there with food,
water, change your clothing, whatever, right? If you do not have that luxury, and this weekend I do not, you have to be smart about caching food and water. So I've cached food and water at Gray's Meadow Campground, and then the night before, went up the road, I cached water, no food, because if you try to cache food, the critters will get to it probably before you do. So no food, probably no sugary drinks, just water. And for me, I planted them at the roughly 8.5 mile mark, and then again at 10.5 miles. And that way, you don't have to lug a ton of food and water with you. And you know, like 2-3 pounds doesn't seem like a big deal, but it actually is, right? 2-3 pounds over, you know, 10-12 miles at altitude, at steep grades, you will absolutely feel the difference. Real quick pit stop at my campsite at Upper Gray's Meadows. I got a little spam musubi. It's looking a little bit beat up, and probably this is the end of solid food for me. You know, going forward on endeavors like this, you kind of have to be on a liquid diet, so it's going to be gels for me, and for me they really work, like quick hitting, and every packet for a ride like this may be worth, I don't know, like 30 minutes, and then fill it with water, and then add a little liquid IV, and that's always helped in the past. And then we'll be on our way. Coming out of these hairpins, I'm seeing grades 14, 15, 16%. I'm not sure how accurate my bike computer is, but that's kind of like what it feels like. And so I'm kind of nearing my first cache point at around 8.5 miles. I hope I hope my goodies are still there. I'm gonna be disappointed if they are not. So let's hope my cache is still here. I can see my footprint, so this is it. Yeah, right on. Okay, so here's my water bottle. And then a couple of Gatorade bottles. Sweet, thank you. Mile marker like 10.5. Now we're getting into the pine trees predominantly, and not the chaparral or whatever you call it. And I'm hearing water. So, you know, maybe if you get desperate, you could like pull over. Again, mile marker 10.5. We're close. These cars parked along the side of the road indicate overflow parking. So we're close. So, like, how would I describe it? You know, again, I would say mostly relief that I didn't fail, and thus I won't be upset, angry. Relief in terms of, you know, I won't have to come back and finish what I started. And this is a beautiful, a sharp, beautiful hike. And these people are about to experience it. Really great weather too. They're gonna get rained on at some point. Kind of like last night. But it is an absolutely beautiful hike.
Okay, that's gonna wrap up this video. I've got a couple of kayak fishing trips planned, so you should be seeing footage from those 2 trips in the near future. And as always, I want to thank you for dropping by. Have fun, be safe, and we will see you soon. Bye for now.